What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman here for Stokastic.com, back again with the NFL DFS contenders on FanDuel for week 2. We're already here. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Let me know in the comments, what do you like from this video? What do you dislike? Who are your favorite plays? I want to know it all. Let me know in the comments, and I'll pop my head in for a little bit. We'll have a little bit of back and forth. It'll be a good time. Finally, head to the description of this video, click the link, and head on over to Prize Picks. They will match any deposit you make up to $100. So you put in 25 bucks, they'll match with 25. Now you got 50. But if you put in 100, they'll match with 100. Now you're starting off a little bit of a Prize Picks bankroll, 200 bucks. You don't need an optimizer or anything like that. You're picking player props, over-unders across a wealth of different sporting options. You hit 5 of them in one bet, net up to 10x your entry fee. You can't ask for anything better. Plenty of tools at Stokastic/OddsShopper that can help you out there as well. We're looking at the top 10 defenses. Cleveland Browns at the top of the list for this week. No real surprise there. That's what happens when you take on the New York Jets. Who are going to be my top 5 quarterbacks, running backs, wideouts, and tight ends for this week? It is time to find out. Kittle, Freiermuth, Albert O, Ertz, Schultz, and then TJ Hockenson in at number 5. Before I get to Hockenson, I just want to say it. I don't expect George Kittle to play, but he's in the projections until he's not. He's the optimal tight end 4% of the time. This isn't changing anything about anything. I just wanted to point it out because I know it's coming in the comments. Hockenson is 5,700, projected for 9.3 fantasy points. Detroit, 1-point favorites against Washington. First time they've been favorites in a game in like multiple years. That's hilarious and kind of sad for Detroit. Sorry, Detroit. 48.5 point total, though, looks good. You're not expecting TJ Hockenson to go for 30 fantasy points, and that's fine. He's optimal 8% of the time. It's hard for me to say much more. Just keep your eyes peeled for other potential Detroit options. I like Hockenson as part of a stack. I like him just in general. He's the 5th tight end, but the separation between like him and Albert O at 8 is basically nothing. It's really hard to separate tight end until you get to the top. The top starts now. We're into double digits. Kyle Pitts in at number 4, 5,900, projected for 10 fantasy points. Atlanta, probably going to be throwing a lot. They're 10-point dogs with a 46.5 point total against the Rams. They'll probably be behind early. They're going to be behind often. They're not, you're not going to get 30 plus out of Pitts all that frequently, but you are going to get him in the optimal lineup 10% of the time. That's all I really need. The opportunities should be there. Best case scenario, he catches an early touchdown and just gets to keep playing like it's a close game. Worst case scenario, he's going to have a big second half because the Atlanta Falcons are trying to save the game. Another 10%er here, number 3, Darren Waller, 6,800, projected for a little over 10 fantasy points. The Raiders are taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Raiders are 5-point favorites with a 51.5 point total. That means a lot of scoring is coming here. We're definitely going to talk about someone else as a pass catcher for the Raiders with Waller. Should be a decent stack that maybe you guys want to get to. 10% likelihood, though, for Waller to go into an optimal lineup. Looks the same as Pitts, just a slightly higher salary, slightly higher ceiling. We take another little bit of a jump up here. $7,400 Mark Andrews is in at number 2. 7,400, projected for 12.7 fantasy points. Baltimore taking on Miami. They're 3.5-point favorites, 44.5 point total. Not much else to say here. It's, 1% chance that Andrews goes for north of 30. You'd be pretty happy about it, but it's not super duper likely. 12% likelihood to be in the optimal. There's just not a lot of separation here. Andrews, though, firmly in the 2 spot. And then we get to number 1. I was just kidding when I said firmly tied with Tyler Higbee at that top spot. 5,300 for Higbee, projected for 9 fantasy points. Rams are massive favorites in this one. Honestly, the Ram, like if you want to go to the double tight end thing, not totally my bag, but Higbee here plus Pitts, that kind of works as the bring back on either side of it. They're 10-point favorites. They should smack him around. Getting Higbee to catch some like red zone touchdowns feels like a pretty good opportunity. You're never getting 30 fantasy points out of Higbee. If he does, clip this and feel free to post it around. 12.5% chance, though, that he is in the optimal lineup. If you want to save a little bit of money at tight end, if you want to try to hope that you get that early Higbee touchdown, that's what you're going to be looking for. I don't expect a ton of passing in the second half for the Rams, but if you get it early, that's all that matters. But at 5,300, it's worth the shot. Tyler Higbee, your number 1 tight end. Kirk Cooks, Renfro, Moore, Robinson. They round out the bottom of my top 10. AMON-RA St. Brown in at number 5, 6,900, projected for 13 fantasy points. Detroit, like I said, they're favorites here. Maybe St. Brown pairs pretty well with TJ Hawkinson, something that you guys could write down right now, plan it out for Sunday. 5% chance for St. Brown to go for more than 30. That would be fantastic and much more than you need at that price tag. 12% likelihood St. Brown is in the optimal lineup. I think he looks great here, and I really do like this Lions stack coming up for Sunday. Not something I was expecting to say, but so far, it's pointing me in that direction. At number 4, we've got DEEBO Samuel. He is 8K, projected for 15 fantasy points. Niners, big favorites against Seattle, 8.5 points. Just a 41-point total, though, but I think that fits Samuel either way. 7% chance he goes for more than 30. 12.5% chance he's in your optimal lineup. He's just sort of a threat everywhere. And against Seattle, I think that's totally fine. Ignoring what we saw in week 1, I don't expect to see that every single week. I think Samuel can thrive here, whether that's getting a couple balls on it, just getting out into space in general. Whatever DEEBO Samuel wants to do, I assume he's going to do it well. Similarly, I expect TYREEK Hill to have a big one. 8K, projected for 14.5. Miami 3.5-point dogs against Baltimore. Hill, 6.5% likelihood to go for more than 30, and you guys know exactly what that would look like because TYREEK Hill's big playability is probably unrivaled in the NFL. This dude can go from 0 to 100 real quick. 13.5% chance that Hill is in the optimal lineup. That is enough to get him to the number 3 spot. Now we get to the big guns. Number 2 is Cooper Kupp, 9,700, projected for 19.5. Rams, as I've mentioned, big favorites, 46.5-point total. Now we're getting into the guys with the true slate-breaking ceiling. 30 fantasy points or more from Cooper Kupp happens 20% of the time. 1 out of every 5 times you play this slate. 17% chance that he's in the optimal lineup. You're gonna need a lot from Cooper Kupp for sure. The price tag's big and you don't have the benefit of that additional half point that you would normally have on DraftKings. It's half point PPR here, so the receptions aren't as big. You need a lot of yardage. You want those touchdowns. I don't see any reason to try to avoid Cooper Kupp. You're gonna have to find some value elsewhere, but that's totally fine with me because there aren't a lot of options better than Cooper Kupp at wideout. In fact, I only think there's one, and that one is Davante Adams because he is 8,800. He's projected for 19 fantasy points. The Raiders are favorites. There's a total of north of 50 fantasy points. The game just sets up better for Adams. And he's more cost effective. 18% chance for him to go for north of 30. That's not too far behind Cooper Kupp, but he's a lot cheaper. And that's why you see him in the optimal lineup 21% of the time. That's the biggie. A clear number 1 spot. Cooper Kupp, clearly 2. Those guys are very, very separated from the pack. But you're going to have some trouble with lineups. You're going to have to make a choice a lot of the time. Do I want Adams or do I want Kupp? Because if the question is, I want Adams and Kupp, what do I want? What do I want to do elsewhere? You're going to have some pretty ugly answers. For now, though, Davante Adams, numero uno at wide receiver. At running back, we've got Kamara, Swift, Fournette, Mixon, and Jacobs rounding out the bottom of the top 10. Javonte Williams coming in at number 5. Caught a ton of balls last week. Are we going to see that same sort of pass receiving volume this week? I don't know, but even if he can be like a little bit less than that, that's still going to work for you at 7,300. He's projected for 15 fantasy points, and the real appeal here, Denver are 10-point favorites against Houston with a 46-point total. This is a nice get-right spot for the Broncos. 5% chance that Williams goes for north of 30, but a 15% chance he's in the optimal. He's just efficient. Now, catching all those passes, again, as I just mentioned in the wideout section, not as appealing on FanDuel as it is on DraftKings, but it's still going to be a big chunk of Williams' output, and that's still enough to get him to 5th. At 4, we're going all the way to 5 figures. Jonathan Taylor, 10K this week, projected for 20. Indy, 3.5-point favorites against the Jags, 45.5-point total. 19% chance to go for more than 30, 17% chance to be in the optimal. We know exactly what we need out of Taylor because at 10K, there's no messing around. He's got to basically go for 30 fantasy points. You're going to need a touchdown. You might need 2. You need 100 yards on the ground or at least like 150 yards of total offense. You need everything from Taylor. You can't have any vultured touchdowns or any funny business, 4th and inches field goal attempts from the goal line. You need Jonathan Taylor to put himself in the end zone, and honestly, I think that he is more than likely to do it, and that's why he's in at number 4. At number 3, we're going Saquon Barkley, 8,800, projected for 18 fantasy points. Giants looking good here. Favorites against Carolina. Barkley had a monster day in week 1. He's got a 12% chance to go for more than 30, and a 17% likelihood to be in the optimal, which means you can get there with a 24, 25 point performance out of Barkley. I don't have any reason to suspect that he can't do it, but the distribution of his fantasy outcomes, it's all over the map. He's basically just as likely to go less than 10 as he is over 30. It's not 8% and 12%. There's not a huge difference there. The error bars are big here. Could he have a monster day? Absolutely. Could he be a total bust? Absolutely. That's kind of the point of the NFL and DFS in general, but I like the idea of going to Barkley. I think the $8,800 price tag works given what we saw in week 1. I'm ready to go right back to him in week 2. Now, this one scares me a little bit more. Christian McCaffrey in at number 2, 9K. Same matchup, projected for 19 fantasy points. Now we're on the Carolina side. Take McCaffrey and Barkley if you can. 1.5 point dogs for Carolina. 14% chance McCaffrey goes for more than 30. 19% chance that he's in the optimal. He wasn't good in week 1, and I had a lot of him, and it wasn't fun. Did he get in the end zone? Yes, he did. Did he do anything else of value in that game? No, he did not. And as someone that lives in the state of North Carolina and saw a little bit more discourse on McCaffrey, people weren't very happy. I think we see a little bit more of a righting of the ship. He needs to be more involved in the passing game. That was a little bit lackluster. I don't want to see Christian McCaffrey as a running back only. He should be all over the field doing a little bit of everything. I think we see a little bit more of a change here this week. So I want to go back to McCaffrey, but he's in at number 2, not enough to get to number 1. You get some value here at number 1. That's Darrell Henderson, 6,200, projected for 14.5. Rams, big favorites. If Henderson can score early, he's in for a really big day because he should have a nice second half workload. He's not going for 30 all that frequently, 3.5% of the time, but he is in the optimal lineup 20% of the time, 1 out of every 5. That's how frequently the Cooper Kupp was going for north of 30, if you want to put it into perspective. It's just a great spot. You expect them to lean on the running game with Henderson as they pick up more and more of a lead because the Atlanta Falcons just aren't very good. And that's really all I need to see because at 6,200, you've got a little bit more wiggle room for, I don't want to say failure, but you don't need the same ceiling. And that's why we get Henderson in the number 1 spot. Now, before we get to the quarterbacks, one last reminder, like, subscribe, notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow this guy right here on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Get in the comments and let me know what you're thinking for week 2. And then go to the description and head on over to Prize Picks and get that deposit bonus. Put it 100, get 100. It's that simple. The bottom of the quarterback list reads Goff, Wentz, Tua, Burrow, Murray, and Russell Wilson into the number 5 spot, 7,500, projected for 19 fantasy points. Certainly like throwing to Javonte Williams, but 10-point favorites here. If he can't get, like, the return to Seattle didn't work. If he can't run it through Houston, I don't know what's going to happen, but I expect him to pick this Texans team apart. 13% chance he goes for more than 37% chance that he's in the optimal lineup. When push comes to shove, I don't care all that much what I'm getting at quarterback. It's all about what I get at wideout and tight end and how I can bring a quarterback along for the ride. So find your spots, whether that's Sutton or Judy or some other pass catcher for the Broncos. Whoever that's going to be, I like pairing them with Russell Wilson. I'm also more than happy to go to Matt Stafford here, projected for 20 fantasy points at 7,600. Rams should be smacking the Atlanta Falcons. We've talked about the Rams. We certainly talked about Cooper Kupp. Pairing Kupp and Stafford up is a no-brainer and a very, very obvious move to most people. 13% chance that Stafford goes for more than 30. 7% chance that he is your optimal quarterback. Whatever you got to do to get Stafford, feel free to go for it. Again, these guys look very similar, but if you go to Cooper Kupp, there are worse things in life than having Matt Stafford with him. You could also go to Trey Lance, 7,500, projected for 19.5. A threat to do it on the ground, a threat to do it through the air. Shout out DEEBO Samuel, I guess. 8.5 point line here, 41 point total, not the best, but 13% chance for Lance to go for more than 30 and an 8% chance to be in the optimal. I did not expect to see Trey Lance get to number 3, but I think that's what happens when you're such a big favorite. Even with the low total against Seattle, I think there's a lot of room for upside on Lance. 7,500 is not that scary of a price tag. Clearly, Samuel's going to be your first choice. You would love to get a little bit of George Kittle. I don't think that's going to work out for you this week, but either way, because of the threat on the ground, Trey Lance looks good. As does number 2, Derek Carr, 7,300, almost projected for 21 fantasy points. Whether you want to stack up Carr with Davante Adams, that'll work. Darren Waller, that'll work. Both guys, very good combinations here with Carr in a game that's expected to have 51.5 real points, which means that the likelihood of going north of that, 50-50. Honestly, there's a lot of scoring on the table here in this game. 14% chance for Carr to go for more than 30. 9% likelihood he is in the optimal. Very stackable, very easy, and the upside in this one, huge. And then we close it out with Lamar Jackson. No real surprise here. 8,200, projected for 22.3 fantasy points. 3.5 point favorites, 44.5 point total. 22% chance that Lamar goes for north of 30. You know what kind of threat he is on the ground. You can certainly throw a couple touchdowns to someone like Mark Andrews. So if you need to stack, that is a very easy pairing to get to. 11% likelihood that Lamar is your optimal quarterback. I do like that Andrews-Jackson pairing. If you need to go naked quarterbacks, there are certainly worse options than Lamar Jackson. But again, it's hard to separate these guys. 11% means that 89% of the time he's not your optimal quarterback, or even the second best quarterback, probably 80% of the time. But that still doesn't matter at all because somebody's got to be number 1. And for this week, it's Lamar. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS contenders on FanDuel for week 2. There's a DraftKings version of this video around here somewhere. Check it out. Good luck, everybody. Win some money. I am back again Sunday morning for another edition of the Contenders.